Did you know that Halo has a full-fledged anime movie? No, seriously. Halo Legends is a collection of 8 shorts that take place within the Halo universe, 7 of which are canon. The entire collection had debuted by 2010 to mostly positive reception and holds up really well today. Longtime Halo fans are likely already aware of its existence, but maybe never gave it a shot. I'm here to tell you that was the wrong decision. Halo Legends is awesome. Let's talk about it. If you haven't seen it, spoilers ahead. I'd like to preface what follows with a statement. I don't know shit about anime. Seriously, I'm clueless. The only anime I've been exposed to is a good portion of the first season of Death Note, a few Studio Ghibli films, a bunch of Castlevania games if that even counts, and obviously Halo Legends. I've never seen One Piece, Dragon Ball, or even Pokemon. You might be wondering, why dude, what the hell is wrong with you? And to that I say, you don't have the time, pal. Joking aside, I have literally no reason for not having experienced any of these iconic pieces of pop culture. I just haven't. Now that's out of the way, and you know I'm king of weebs and a certified expert in anime as a whole, let's talk about something I clearly know nothing about instead, Halo. For real though, I may not know a Dragon Ball from a Pokeball or a Sailor Moon from a Harvest Moon, but I do know my Halo and I know it well. Without further ado, let's talk about Halo Legends already. Something worth mentioning before we delve into the stories within the movie is the incredible artwork contained throughout. Some of the shots are just beautiful from both a cinematography standpoint and strictly because of the art itself. Most of these shorts are also written incredibly well, sometimes telling deeply emotional stories in a very short amount of time. As I said before, Halo Legends is broken up into 8 individual parts. Origins, Origins 2, the Duel, Homecoming, Odd One Out, Prototype, the Babysitter, and the Package. In order to convert each of these stories into full-blown cartoons, 6 different talented Japanese animation studios were recruited to help make it a reality. Studio 4C worked on Origins, Origins 2, and The Babysitter. The Duel was done by Production IG. Homecoming was animated by B-Train. Odd One Out was Toei Animation. Bones helped create Prototype. And finally, The Package was made by Casio Entertainment. For some weird reason, I couldn't really find any information about Casio Entertainment online. They don't even seem to have their own Wikipedia page. If anybody knows more about them or why they seem to have fallen into an internet black hole, let me know in the comments. I'm genuinely curious. The beginning of the movie is called Origins 1, and it's actually the first glimpse into the conflict that happened before the Halo rings were initially fired, the Forerunner Flood War, but from Cortana's perspective. If you remember, after Halo 3, she and the Chief were left to drift through space aboard the UNSC forward onto Dawn. The Chief spent 4 years, 7 months, and 10 days in cryo until he was awoken by Cortana at the beginning of Halo 4. That means that Cortana was forced to sit there with nothing but her own thoughts for over 4 years. She had no way of knowing if she'd survive long enough for them to get rescued, or if they'd even get rescued at all. They were completely lost in space with no way to contact any human forces. To make matters even worse, smart AIs have a very short lifespan, roughly only 7 years. Once they reach that age, their knowledge base starts to become too large, and they begin literally thinking themselves to death. Cortana spent roughly half of her life aimlessly floating in space, knowing full well that her inevitable descent into insanity was growing closer by the moment, and was literally forced to do nothing but just sit and think about that very fact. That's not all she thought about, though. She also contemplated the data and information she'd gathered from her time on the Halo rings and the Ark, piecing together, to the best of her abilities, what happened to the ancient race that left behind this arsenal of artifacts. She tells the story of the Forerunners and their battles against the parasite known as the Flood. It's not a complete picture of what happened, but it's a good one, and actually the first substantial look into this time period that we as the viewers are introduced to. As she tells the tale, we finally get to see what Forerunners' lives looked like during the waning days of their fall, or at the very least, her best guess and interpretation. We never get to see the Forerunners' faces thanks to the fact that they always wear helmets. I imagine this decision was made to preserve the mystery regarding the identity of the Forerunners. When Halo Legends was released, there still wasn't a definitive answer regarding the nature of their species. Were they human or something else entirely? Of course, Halo 4 would eventually answer this question not long after. Forerunners aren't humans! Excuse me. Anyways, we get to watch as the Forerunners are quickly consumed by the Flood and are, for the most part, overwhelmingly defeated. As you probably know, their tenacity wasn't enough to defeat their adversaries. They were forced to create a fatal Plan B, the Halos, which, when activated, would eliminate all sentient life within the galaxy and prevent the Flood from spreading to more hosts. Fortunately, they were able to obtain many individuals from different intelligent races throughout the galaxy and store them in genetic containers called silexes, ensuring that they could repopulate after the installation's activation. As we can see, this part of their plan went off relatively without a hitch, and once the rings had been fired, automated systems would deliver the various species to their own worlds. Needless to say, this came at a great cost to the Forerunners. This plan may have halted the Flood's expansion and saved a significant portion of several intelligent species, but in so doing, they were unable to save themselves. Origins 1 ends on a somber, if not slightly hopeful note. The Forerunners made the ultimate self-sacrifice so that others could live. So, in a way, even though they had all mostly perished, by saving humanity and the species of the Covenant, they triumphed against the Flood. Origins 2 is more of a recap of sorts. It details the events of the original Halo trilogy and prior, once again from Cortana's perspective. It's honestly a rather depressing take on humanity as a whole as she looks across history and contemplates many human-on-human bloodbaths. She believes that conflict and war are somehow baked into us, that some deeply rooted primal desire for violence has always and will always exist. Another far more admirable trait she decides to discuss is our desire to journey into the unknown. Humans seem to possess an insatiable thirst for exploration, to go where no one has gone before and to make new discoveries about the universe and ourselves. Each night, mankind would look to the stars and wonder, what else is out there? It's this question that eventually drives us deep into the unknown recesses of space, discovering and colonizing many worlds. With new worlds comes new spaces to covet, and much like our battles over continents on our home planet, humans began fighting over the stars. With new technological innovation came new weapons, and thus, war. The settings may have changed, but what seemed like humankind's desire to kill one another had not.
War. War never changes.
The only thing that could unite humanity, the only way to stop the bloodshed, was the emergence of a common enemy. In this case, the Covenant. Cortana goes on to describe the brutal nature of this new war with enemies humanity didn't even fully understand. Most know from playing the Halo games that the Covenant was hell-bent on the complete and total genocidal annihilation of our entire species, until a much deadlier and much older threat was re-released on the galaxy. This old threat, if you paid any attention during the original Halo trilogy, was the Flood. They had returned, and much like before, were intent on universal assimilation. Much like how the appearance of the Covenant had unified humanity, the appearance of the Flood forced parts of the Covenant into a similar situation. With the galaxy momentarily unified, the Flood was, for the time being, defeated. Origins 2 closes with Cortana aboard the Forward Unto Dawn, much like how Origins 1 began. She speaks to the Chief directly, approaches his cryopod, glitches out a little bit because she's getting old, then somehow wipes away some haze on the Chief's pod? Wait, what? The camera pans into her eye and transitions to a halo ring seemingly being sent through slipspace, ending on a very positive note.
There will always be warriors. And there will always be war.
As much as I enjoy Origins 1 and 2, the Duel is my favorite part of Halo Legends. The unique, almost watercolor look of this short's art style gives it some serious visual flair, really helping it stand apart from anything else in the collection, and any other Halo media for that matter. It takes place before the Covenant have even encountered humanity and illustrates the struggles of a Sangheili, or elite warrior, named Fal Shavami. Fal possessed the highest ranking title within his culture. He was an Arbiter. Only the greatest of warriors were ever given such a title, and like those that came before him, he had proven himself time and time again in battle. This elite is actually the reason that the rank of Arbiter became a mark of shame. We're not told why, but for some reason Fal has begun questioning his faith in the religious dogma preached by the Sanchayum, or prophets. Fal confides in a friend about this, a Sangheili named Ro, expressing his fear that their people have been led astray. He implies that they need to break free from the Covenant to be strong on their own like the times of old. Questioning things is a big no-no for the Covenant, and a warrior far more loyal to the Pact's religion, along with many other species within the group, are dispatched to take Fal down for his blasphemy. What follows is a series of battles where Fal is pursued by Covenant forces and absolutely eviscerating anyone that was sent his way.
He's a demon!
Placed between many of these fight scenes are moments of peaceful conversation between Fal and his wife Han. Han just so happens to be the first and, as far as I can remember, only Sangheili female we've ever actually visually seen. Regardless of how many soldiers are sent to kill Fal, he completely annihilates them all. The previously mentioned zealous elite, Haka and the Prophet, quickly realize that there's no way they'll be able to catch Fal and likely surmise that if he continued on this path of rebellion, others would soon follow. In an attempt to force Fal into a confrontation with Haka, the Prophet ordered the elite to go to Fal's home where Han sat unguarded. In a sick and twisted turn of events, Haka seemingly forces Fal's friend Ro, the very same elite he had confided in earlier, to brutally torture Fal's wife. Ro and Han are likely friends thanks to their mutual connection with Fal, making this all the more sick. Once Han is broken and battered, Ro shakily apologizes, clearly traumatized for life and filled with overwhelming guilt. He holds a large blade over Han, preparing to execute her, but he falters. He can't do it. He can't kill his friend. He can't murder his friend's lover. Haka steps forward and places his hands over Ro's, forcing the blade downwards and onto the helpless woman, likely killing her instantly. In an equally touching and depressing as hell moment, Fal returns home only to find his loved one's corpse on the floor of their house. Personally, as someone who loves their wife dearly, I can only imagine how world-shattering this would be for Fal. But instead of conceding to sadness and despair, he decides to finally confront Haka. The two of them prepare for battle, but the fight is relatively short. No clanging of swords or butting of heads. Both warriors lunge forward and strike. It's revealed that Haka's blade made its way home. Fal staggers before an absolute fountain of blood gushes from his chest, Evil Dead style. Before he falls to the ground in a heap, we see that Fal's blade also hit its mark and is embedded deep within Haka's chest. Both warriors collapse onto the ground in a puddle of gore in the short ends. As depressing as it may be, this portion of Halo Legends provided the first real visual look into Sangheili culture, and as such, it holds a special place in my heart. Homecoming is a weird one. This particular story is centered around a Spartan 2 named Daisy as she wrestles with the mental trauma created by the Spartan program. Much like the Duel, it constantly flashes between two distinct time periods, the first of which is moments from her youth when she and a few other Spartan 2s had broken out of their training facility in an attempt to return home. The other time period shows a much more recent struggle where Daisy is in combat with a contingent of Covenant forces and is attempting to help evac a group of Marines from a now lost human world. The combat in these scenes is good, if not a little corny at times. In the past, Daisy had rebelled against the UNSC and somehow managed to make it back to her homeworld of Sargasso, a beautiful planet covered mostly by oceans. As the UNSC is pursuing her, she runs toward what seems to be her childhood home. It's a gorgeous place, and it's located on a small island only accessible via a long bridge. As it turns out, the future segments that show her fighting the Covenant also take place on Sargasso, but after its destruction. The location of the Covenant battle just so happens to be the exact area her childhood home was located. This creates some really cool contrast. As she runs across the bridge connecting to her house, the visuals flash between the present and the past, really driving home how picturesque her planet was before the Covenant arrived. In the past, when she arrives at her home, she is confronted with a girl in a wheelchair, a girl that looks identical to herself. Before she's able to approach, Dr. Halsey, the creator of the Spartan program, manages to speak to her through a comm unit in her ear and explains the truth behind what Daisy is seeing. When Halsey and the UNSC abducted children to be Spartans, they didn't just grab the kids and bail. They created clones of each individual so that there would be no suspicion behind their disappearance. The cruelest part of this was that cloning humans didn't really work well, and these carbon copies would be plagued with congenital disorders, causing them to deteriorate and die very quickly. Daisy had been replaced by a copy of herself and was, without a doubt, enraged by this. In response to this new information, she ran towards her clone and pointed a gun at her. The two of them have a bit of a stare down for a little while until the clone version of herself speaks. Instead of reacting out of fear, the clone simply smiles and explains to the true Daisy that she is the ideal version of herself and that she often dreamt of being strong, like her. The clone hands Daisy a small teddy bear keychain, likely a keepsake from childhood and a toy that Daisy seems to recognize. She takes the object and leaves to return to her training. In the present, she makes it part of the way down the bridge before she's shot in the chest and a needle pierces her armor. She falls to the ground and the Pelican full of Marines she was trying to help evac, accompanied by her escapee friend in Spartan 2 Washout, explode in a ball of flame. The perspective shifts a bit, and we see Daisy's parents mourning over the death of their daughter, the clone from before. We see a gravesite for her clone as the real Daisy dies on the stone bridge connected to her original home. Before Homecoming ends, a familiar green figure walks towards Daisy's body, John 117, the Master Chief. He approaches her corpse, and he seems to mourn her loss for a moment before the short finally comes to an end. Aren't these so cheery? Odd One Out really is the odd one out for many reasons. For one, it was the first officially licensed Halo story that was deemed non-canon, and to date, aside from the Halo TV series, which we shall not discuss, is, for the most part, the only non-canon piece of Halo media. That meant that its creators were allowed to really have fun with the project, and in so doing, provide some much needed levity into what is otherwise a series of really depressing stories. This goofy portion of Halo Legends is a comedy showing the exploits of a Spartan 2 soldier designated 1337. Unlike other Spartans of his ilk, 1337 is an absolute idiot, and just a little self-obsessed.
Even if you don't want to know, I'll tell you who I am. I am one of the strongest warriors in space. I am Spartan! 1337.
The story kicks off with the aforementioned super soldier falling out of a pelican that he was riding in with Chief and Cortana. He crash lands onto a planet and immediately comes into contact with 3 young children dressed in classic caveman garb. Before really getting to react, a literal gigantosaurus comes running out of nowhere and attacks 1337, thrashing him about in its massive set of jaws. The children don't really react at all, and instead of freaking out, one of them throws a stick in the opposite direction. Naturally, the rambunctious reptile spits the Spartan out and runs towards the stick to retrieve it. You know, because it's their pet or something, obviously. Meanwhile, a prophet is contemplating his next plan of attack, and it's revealed that the Covenant has created a brand new bioweapon that he thinks will be able to kill the Chief. This strange weapon is actually a living creature, seemingly some kind of brute tech hybrid or something, called Pluton. The Prophet decides to deploy the creature to battle the Chief, sending it to the planet that 1337 had crash landed on. Instead of coming into contact with John, the bizarre biped encounters 1337. Before the kids get hurt, 1337 tells them they need to flee, and they do so, returning home to regale their older siblings with the things they had just experienced. Pluton and 1337 engage in extremely exaggerated combat, destroying entire mountains and having a few cool Master Chief and a bubble shield moments. Pluton absolutely wipes the floor with this dipshit, and things start to look grim, but 1337 won't give up. As he rises up to fight again, he realizes that this strange techno-alien hybrid had flung the Spartan into a different area, and when he stood, he was met by the older siblings of the 3 young kids from before. He also discovers that an old UNSC frigate had crash-landed on the planet some time ago, and the children claim that's where they were all born. 1337 marches onward to once again fight Pluton, this time accompanied by the older kids he'd just met. Instead of doing the sensible thing and staying behind, they decide to help him fight because they're supposedly tougher than they look, but aren't as tough as Mama.
That sounds like one heck of a mama. But you know what? I'm one heck of a mama myself!
What the hell is happening? The idea that a couple of random teens could possibly fight a creature that just whooped a Spartan 2 super soldier is, of course, completely ridiculous. And yet, they somehow hold their own. With their help, 1337 manages to fight back instead of getting totally massacred. Suddenly, the crashed UNSC frigate activates and opens up a portal into slipspace. The ship launches an escape pod into Pluton, carrying the beast through the portal and thus ending the threat. According to the kids, this is the doing of Mama, who is revealed by Cortana to be an AI. Instead of retrieving her, Cortana suggests they leave her there because she's happy. No, seriously, that's exactly what she says. Even Chief is like, huh? One of the final shots is of a cabin on a hill with the voices of the children being heard having a conversation with a woman. Obviously, this is the so-called Mama.
By the way, dinner's ready.
I'm hungry.
I thought so. Now go wash your hands.
Okay.
And clean behind your ears.
What? The perspective shifts and we see 1337 attempting to rendezvous with the Chief before he's snatched up and carried away by a pterodactyl. It then flashes to Pluton, who's now floating aimlessly in space by a halo ring. The end. Prototype tells the story of a Marine dubbed Ghost. As a commander, he was forced to make tough decisions, one of which led to the death of an entire squad, leaving him as the only survivor. These events, among others that we don't see as the viewer, lead to him obtaining the previously mentioned nickname. Those who served under him referred to him as Ghost because many believed he was but a husk of a man, an uncaring and unfeeling soldier with no humanity. Similar to previous portions of Halo Legends, this story frequently makes use of flashbacks. Each look into the past shows the protagonist as he holds a dying member of his squad, a woman and the only survivor other than himself. In the present, he's at a UNSC weapons research facility attempting to destroy it so that the Covenant are unable to gather any information from inside. The most integral aspect of this mission is to blow up a prototype weapon, a large mech suit akin to the Cyclops from Halo Wars. He quickly discovers that the suit can't self-destruct without a spoken authorization code, so he makes the decision to hop into the mech and fight the nearby Covenant forces as its self-destruction timer slowly counts down. As he fights, he constantly thinks back to the moment that the woman from his platoon had died in his arms. Her final words haunted him. In her dying breath, she asked him what she was to him. She asked him if he could feel, if his emotions worked at all. In the moment, all he could do was try to stop her from speaking. Each time she uttered a word, it would cost her valuable energy, and if she continued, she'd bleed out even faster. The woman didn't care though. She knew she was going to die, and instead of remaining silent in her final moments, she implored Ghost to not be so cold and calculated. She practically begged him to just be human. Something within him broke that day, and from then on, he vowed to never let the soldiers under his command die again. He aimed to make the ultimate sacrifice play and use the suit until it was ready to self-destruct in order to give the Marines he was fighting alongside and a boatload of evacuees still on the planet enough time to escape. He fought valiantly, and thanks to his efforts, many people lived to see another day. He, however, did not. After butchering tons of Covenant forces and finally being completely incapacitated, the suit's self-destruct timer reached 0. A phrase flashed on his heads-up display, and a voice within the suit prompted him to speak the code aloud in order to initiate final detonation. The phrase was, "Be human." He thought back to that fateful day when the girl died in his arms once more. That was what she'd asked of him. She'd asked him to be human, and in his final hours, he'd done exactly that. Gritting his teeth, he spoke the passkey and the suit exploded, killing him and many of the nearby Covenant forces. Prototype ends with a report being written by one of Ghost's superiors. In this report, the unknown naval man praises his selflessness, courage, and for being an exemplary human being. The Babysitter sees a group of ODSTs given the important task of finding and eliminating one of the Covenant's leaders, a prophet. One of these ODSTs just so happens to be a blonde Dutch from Halo 3 ODST. This is him right here. Using a good old-fashioned sniper rifle, they'd shoot the prophet from afar whenever the creature left itself exposed. This would hopefully destabilize the Covenant leadership, at least in the area. Dutch, alongside the other ODSTs in the squad, are told that they'll be accompanied by a Spartan named Cal on their newest mission, a fact that one of the members, a guy named O'Brien, is particularly unhappy with. He himself is one hell of a sniper, and he doesn't like that he has to take a backseat to anyone, Spartan or otherwise. This, along with the tension that already seems to exist between Spartans and ODSTs, makes their situation a little awkward. To successfully assassinate the Prophet, they need to drop onto a planet's surface roughly 14 hours from where UNSC Intel had pinpointed the location of their target. This particular planet saw frequent meteor showers, so if they came in via drop pods, they would go unnoticed by the Covenant occupiers. On their way down, one member of their squad is killed in atmosphere thanks to an asteroid knocking him off course, but the other 3 ODSTs, along with the Spartan, manage to land on the surface of the planet. 2 of the ODSTs run into zero problems and they're instantly able to climb out of their pods, but O'Brien's pod lands in the middle of a swamp and starts to rapidly sink into the muck. Before Dutch and his buddy can really do anything to try to rescue him, the Spartan strides out of the forest, approaches the pod, picks it up, literally throws it out onto the land, and then proceeds to pry it open with nothing but gauntleted fists. Absolutely badass. O'Brien emerges, shaken and annoyed that his pod has literally been thrown around, and he protests a bit, but looks up to see Cal standing over him. They stare at each other for a moment before the super soldier walks away without a word, moving into the woods and towards their objective. As they move towards a decent sniper perch from which to kill their target, O'Brien accidentally stumbles upon a grunt and is forced to kill it. Unbeknownst to him, a massive brute chieftain had snuck up behind him and was preparing to swing its gravity hammer down onto the relatively tiny ODST. Before the weapon could fully come down, the Spartan stepped in and stopped it mid-swing. The creature was strong though, and quickly bat the Spartan and the ODST away. O'Brien plummets towards a cliff edge and almost falls off, barely hanging on, while Cal engages in combat with the Drohane warrior. Cal completely kicks the shit out of the angry ape and knocks it off a cliff before pulling O'Brien up and saving him for the 3rd time. Cal then proceeds to carry O'Brien away, and he looks like a little baby in the Spartan's arms. O'Brien's ego is just too big though, and instead of thanking the super soldier for saving his neck,
"I'm not crippled, put me down!"
Finally, the foursome climbs up some ancient ruins that they are told are supposedly Forerunner in origin, even though they definitely look human in design. Once they reach the top, Cal gets a sniper out and locates the target, preparing to take the Prophet out. Before anyone can take the shot, they're bum rushed by the very same brute from before who had apparently survived his previous fall. Once again, the beast brought its hammer down onto O'Brien, but before it could impact, Cal stepped between them, taking the full brunt of the attack. This gave the ODSTs the opportunity to finally kill the brute once and for all. One of the men quickly took Cal's helmet off, likely to assess the super soldier's wounds, only to reveal that Cal is a pretty anime lady. This was something none of the ODSTs expected because they're sexist. Especially not O'Brien, who's like, damn, she's hot. As they stare at her, dumbfounded, Cal yells at O'Brien to grab the sniper and take the shot before it's too late. Without a second thought, he rushes towards the weapon, looks down the scope, lines the reticle up with the target's head, and pulls the trigger. The bullet made its way home, tearing through the side of the Prophet's head, enraging the elites around the creature and likely killing it instantly. Unfortunately though, the wounds Cal had sustained were very severe, and she lay there dying. Watching this happen recontextualized everything for the ODSTs, especially O'Brien, who now likely saw the error of his ways. Her death affected him deeply and helped them all realize that the Spartans were human, just like they were, and they deserved their respect. The package is the final part of Halo Legends, and it's by far the lightest in terms of story. It's mostly action and makes use of a strange 3D CG animation style. This particular story stars the Master Chief and a squad of other Spartan 2s, Kelly, Fred, Arthur, and Solomon. Their objective is to secure the package from a Covenant fleet. Using several small space-based attack craft, John and his team began weaving their way through the Covenant ships. Their objective would be detectable using some kind of radar system. Almost as soon as they entered the Covenant battle cluster, Solomon received a positive signal. Instead of waiting for the others to help him verify, he ventured into the Covenant ship, only to find a bomb waiting for him and set to detonate. Before he could react, the explosive erupted into flames and shrapnel, destroying both the ship and Solomon. This foolish decision cost him his life, but it helped the others realize that the Covenant had planted false signals throughout their battle group, each of which was likely another bomb. All of these fake readings were originating from ships surrounding the flagship, so the Chief surmised that their objective was likely inside. The 4 remaining Spartans made their way towards it, dodging and shooting down any Seraphs that got in their way. As they accelerated through the Covenant ships, Arthur smashed into the surface of one of the vehicles. The ship he was piloting exploded and killed him instantly. Chief, Kelly, and Fred continue towards their objective, using their weapons to destroy their way inside, and, of course, their plot armor. The next sequence is a badass hallway fight where the 3 of them run in a straight line, demolishing Covenant forces on their way. The further they go, the greater the resistance becomes, until Chief is forced to go in alone, and he finally makes it to their objective. The Covenant had seemingly abducted Dr. Halsey, who was asleep in a cryopod at the time, and also young and hot, apparently. Together, the 2 of them flee through the Covenant ship until they find an escape craft and use it to bail. Once they begin accelerating away from the ship, which has begun self-destructing, a contingent of Seraphs starts shooting at them. Before any of their shots make their mark, Kelly and Fred fly in behind them in a stolen Seraph and shoot down several of the other attack craft. A cloaked UNSC Prowler then reveals itself, killing the rest of the Seraphs and welcoming Chief and Co. aboard. The final shot is of the Prowler flying away with Halsey saying something reminiscent to what Cortana says in the end of Halo CE. That's it. That's the entirety of Halo Legends. Seriously, if you haven't seen it, you should go give it a watch. It's great. The entire movie is available to stream for free on Tubi as well, so you have no reason not to go check it out. Alright, that's all I've got. Now, if you'll excuse me, I'm gonna go play some Halo.